James?
Yes, hello, this is James Madore.
Hello, James. How are you?
Very good.
Very good, very good. I just got finished reading your story about, the worker shortage. And, well, I guess since you wrote the story, I usually I'll let you tell the listening audience pretty much what you found there.
Okay.
Go for it.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. So the Long Island Association, which is Long Island's leading business group, has a research institute. And what they did is they examined some recent census data. And they found that the number of people living on Long Island who are 0 to age 19 fell by 7.5% between 2010 and 2017. So we have fewer young people. And the Research Institute concluded that means that over time we will have fewer workers who are young. And that's defined as age 20 to 39 years old. And then they talked about what does that mean for our economy? Mm-hmm. And what it means is, and it's, as you might imagine, a little complicated. So the first group that's going to be affected are colleges and universities, including NCC, because there will be fewer people to enroll in college and to take classes. And so I talked to a number of universities in our community, including Adelphi and Malloy College, and they're doing a variety of different things to address that issue of having fewer people in the future in the classroom. Mm-hmm. One of the things is they're recruiting outside of Long Island. Right. In the case of Malloy College, they just are in a few weeks, they're going to open their third dormitory. Right. And they're doing that because you can't recruit students from outside Long Island if you don't have a place for them to stay overnight. So that's one of the things Malloy is doing. Adelphi is focusing on very personalized education, almost individualized education for every single student, and saying if you come to Adelphi, you're going to get this individual attention that you might not get somewhere else. Right. Now, the other major groups that are going to be affected by this change in our population, not surprisingly, are employers, and specifically the largest employer of people aged 20 to 39 years old on Long Island is healthcare. So that's hospitals, nursing homes, home health care aides. 59,000 people on Long Island aged 20 to 39 work in that area. Right. The next closest group, which is about 51,000 people, work in elementary schools. And finally, the third largest group, about 40,000 people, work in construction. So companies in those areas, employers in those areas, healthcare, public schools, construction, are going to face a shortage of workers. So the final part of the report looks at, well, what do we do about this? And there are a number of solutions. One of them is not surprising to your listeners, reverse commuters, trying to get people from New York City to work out here on Long Island. And that's not a complete pipe dream anymore, because obviously there's a lot of work going on the Long Island Railroad. The double track project that's going to add a track from Floral Park to Hicksville. That's all about having the trains go east in the morning and go west in the evening. Also, as you know, they've added another track from Farmingdale to Ronkonkoma. And finally, East Side Access, right? A one-seat trip into Grand Central Station versus Penn Station. That will help get more people out to Long Island to work. We also need to look at the people who are age 20 to 39 who are not working right now. They're not in the workforce. This group is about 139,000 people. Now, 40% of those people are going to college. So you got to take those out. But the other people, why are they not working? So as a community, we need to get these people into the workforce. Now, the reasons they aren't working are there are a number of reasons. One of them is some people are discouraged and feel there are no good jobs out there and there are no meaningful jobs out there, so they've just opted not to work. There's another group of people who are suffering from addiction, maybe to opioids, maybe to something else, and they just are not able to work. And then there's a large group of people who are disabled. And so the LIA is saying this is an untapped source of employees. We need to work on skills, getting these people back into the workforce, and that will help as well.
Right.
And finally, immigration will help us, bring more people into this pool of 20 to 39-year-olds.
Mm-hmm. James, it's really interesting to me that, so these guys did a study, and this is the result that they came out with, is that we're going to be at a shortage for millennials or people in the 0 to 19, the 19-year-olds. My question to them is, so everybody's reacting to that. We're looking at this as though this is the truth, not someone's idea of an answer to the study. It's like statistics. You still need somebody to translate the answer.
That's true. Although
Right.
I would point out these are not estimates. This is census data.
But what I'm getting at is I see people doing backbends trying to figure out how are we going to deal with this when we. How about my brain is going all over the place here. I had the county executive and the county controller here. I did an interview with them, which you can hear on Spreaker.com. Jack Schneerman is the comptroller. He did a study, and he realized that millennials weren't buying cars, and they weren't buying single-dwelling homes, single-family homes. So his assumption from that study was that they don't want those things. It never occurred to him that they can't afford them. Mm-hmm. So their plan is geared on, they don't want these things. Because that's what Jack came up with.
Well, let's say two things to sort of think about here.
But you see what I'm getting at, though.
Right, but I think one of the things to think about here is that what the LIA study is talking about is 10, 15, and 20 years down the road. Right. What the comptroller is talking about is what is happening today. What do millennials feel about our society, the opportunities here? What do they want from Long Island today?
Right. And I get that because Jack
make the point that the Long Island Association study is really looking at the future. They're talking about the next generation of millennials.
Well, the business and all of these things also need a reason to navigate the way that they want to for the future. Right? Jack's got to navigate for right now. So that's what he's saying is happening right now.
Yes, that's very true. They have different.
And I think that's a bogus answer. I think to say that millennials don't want the same things as their parents does is a cop-out.
And I should tell you, the Long Island Association study is much narrower than the comptroller study. What the Long Island Association is looking at is the raw numbers and saying we've lost the number of people who are 0 to 19 years old has fallen by 7.5% from 2010 to 2017.
And they gave us a bunch of reasons. And they gave us a bunch of reasons, none of which were you can't make enough money to live on Long Island at any of those jobs that they're offering.
Well,
that answer's not in there, is it?
Well, but wait a minute. The study doesn't. What you're looking for is not in this study. Okay, they never made those conclusions. The Long Island Association is not.
I don't think they can afford to make those conclusions.
Well, the Long Island Association is not talking about millennials of today. What the Long Island Association is saying is 20 years from now, we're going to face a shortage of workers because the number of people who are 0 to 19 years old is falling.
Okay, but they also did they bring in automation? Did they bring in automation that 50% of the jobs that those millennials would be doing could be automated by them?
That is a possibility. However, if you look at the three key sectors where people right now, age 20 to 39, work.
What are they?
Healthcare, public schools, and construction. Those are not areas of our economy.
How about restaurants?
Where automation.
Most young people I meet are servers. They're working in restaurants. They work at Hooters and.
Well, according to census data, the number of individuals who are 20 to 39-year-olds in 2017. That is the fourth largest group. So there are 36,700 people who are 20 to 39-year-olds who worked in bars and restaurants. That's the fourth largest segment the fourth industry most dependent on 20 to 39-year-olds. The top industry most dependent on 29 to 39-year-olds. In other words, the one employing the most people in that age group is healthcare.
Oh, sure.
Followed by public schools, followed by construction, then bars and restaurants. Mm-hmm. And obviously, automation can be a part of each of these industries. But right now, a lot of automation is really taking place in the manufacturing sector. And that is a sector that is not employing many people who are 20 to 39 years old.
Well, I think the biggest sector of the population is going to affect is people who are drivers, seeing as how the estimate, which I think is very high, but it could be true, anywhere from 50 to 70% of the employment is by people who drive for a living, whether it's 18-wheelers or Uber cars. And if that sector of the population is, or sector of the work area is automated, that is going to, I mean, that'll just throw the biggest boot into everyone's attempt to, not let this happen. Or I don't know. One of the things that gets me, and something I would love to talk to you about, and I know it's not in this, it's not actually in this article, but it is a big, the IDAs, Industrial Development Agencies, the ones who coax businesses to come here. I would love to talk to you about those sometime, because I think Long Islanders would love to know how that works.
And I do write an awful lot about them. I should tell you, in answer to your question, among the top 20 industries that employ Long Islanders age 20 to 39 right now, trucking is not on that list. The other issue would be, as you know, in order for this to happen, in order for us to have automation of transportation, particularly vehicular transportation, we would have to have a law change. Right now, automating transportation the way you're suggesting is not legal in New York State.
Right.
It did just become legal in Florida, though, and it's actually some very interesting tests are going on in Arizona and in California.
Yeah, they've been testing these cars for almost 3 years on the roads now.
Right.
People have been unaware, but they've been out there plenty. I understand that Australia uses driverless trucks to deliver most of the foods to their supermarkets. And these trucks don't need to take breaks. They don't need weekends off. And some of the new technology that's coming out, some of these trucks are being guaranteed to go 1 million miles without maintenance.
In talking to the Long Island Association about why they did this study, one of the things they told me is they want to start a conversation with your listeners, with Long Islanders, not just business people, but all Long Islanders.
Right.
And so what the Long Island Association told me is they don't have all the answers at this point. What they're trying to do is start a conversation, have people begin to think about these issues before we get to a stage where we're in the middle of the worker shortage, and we could have done some planning. We could have taken some steps. One of the things the Long Island Association is a big supporter of is more dense housing on Long Island, more apartments, more developments near Long Island Railroad stations, affordable housing.
Yeah.
That's one of the things the Long Island Association, advocates for and lobbies for.
We've been talking about this for a long time because most of those things that you mentioned are what is known as Agenda 21 from the United Nations. That's their agenda too. Is to put up more buildings there. But again, we've been hearing about affordable housing until we went and asked the principals exactly what those numbers are. And they're not affordable.
Right.
They are not affordable. So if this business group wants to talk about reality, okay, that's one thing. But don't talk about these things in the middle of that atmosphere when people, a kid can't get a job here and afford to live.
Well, a lot depends on, and actually one of the things that's very interesting, the same day that this study came out, a study came out from the Suffolk County Industrial Development Agency and the Workforce Development Institute. You may have seen it. It was about a major change in Long Island's manufacturing community. Our largest manufacturers now are drug and vitamin manufacturers.
Well, along with healthcare being the biggest business.
If you work in that area, you can get a job that on average pays $80,000 a year. These are not low-paying jobs. Mm-hmm. And this particular industry, the pharmaceutical industry, its employment has grown by 64% since 2004 on Long Island. It's the largest manufacturing sector we have now.
Well, it's because everybody's taking a pill every day. I mean, that's...
Well, except it's important to note what we make on Long Island. Mm-hmm. What we make on Long Island is over-the-counter medications.
Right.
We're talking about Rolaids, Dramamine, vitamins.
Right.
We're not a major manufacturer of opioids. We're a major manufacturer of over-the-counter medications, often sold under the name of the retailer that you bought the product from, right, whether it's CVS or Walgreens.
Right.
But one of the reasons that report came out was to point out to young people that there are actually jobs on Long Island that pay a decent wage, and you don't have to start at that employer
right
with a college degree. They'll send you to college if you're a good employee.
Now, those are the things that people need to hear about, which I mean, they may be there, but we don't often hear about them.
Right, and that's one of the reasons, frankly, the Suffolk County IDA and the Workforce Development Institute did this study, which, by the way, was unveiled at a Long Island Association event, because the Long Island Association agrees that we got to think about where are those jobs for the future? Are they going to pay a living wage so someone can buy a home, rent an apartment, have a car, have a decent life on Long Island?
Yeah, I have a question for you. Am I the only one, and I get the impression that I am, it kind of makes me stop in my tracks when, and, you know, again, we just started this conversation, and one of the things you said is that the number one business on Long Island is going to be healthcare. That scares me. Does that make you pause at all?
Well, I should point out, it's the number one industry now on Long Island. I can't tell you what the number one industry is going to be 10, 15, 20 years from now.
But it's been growing. It's been growing for 15 years, though, because we always had hospitals here, but we never had the Northwell Health Amazon that it is now. The conglomerates and the way it's growing is just leaps and bounds.
Well, part of it, as you know,
who's feeding that?
Well, part of it, as you know, is we have an aging population. And that's just not on Long Island, that's everywhere across the country.
But we also have a fleeing population too. Not only the millennials are not the only ones leaving Long Island, the retirees are leaving too.
That is very true.
But again, that takes away from the healthcare ability because your customers are going somewhere else.
Well, your definition of healthcare is probably a little bit different than mine.
Okay.
Because healthcare isn't solely the hospital. No. It isn't solely the urgent care center. One of the reasons healthcare is such a promising employer is because of the research that is being done at places like the Feinstein Institute, which is part of Northwell, at Cold Spring Harbor National Laboratory, at Brookhaven National Laboratory, that is leading to the creation of new knowledge, new products that are then turning into businesses. Yeah. And if you go to some of the incubators that Stony Brook University has, for example, you're seeing the next generation of a biotech company. So healthcare has a broader definition than care.
No, I get it.
Care.
I get it. I hate to sound
individual.
I hate to sound so cynical, but it's been years and years and years of we have a new treatment. We don't often hear we found a cure. We found we have a new treatment. Oh, great. Okay, how much is that treatment? Well, it's only $10,000. Oh, great. Okay, so somebody created a new little industry, and granted, it probably helps people who can afford it.
Well, at the same time, and the other side of this is, if you look at, for example, there's a company at Farmingdale State College called Codagenics. Codagenics was born at Stony Brook University. Right. It was born out of research by a small group of people. It is now a startup company. They moved to Farmingdale because they needed more space. They actually are creating vaccines for diseases like the flu that are revolutionary, because the vaccine is based on a live virus, not a dead virus. It's much more effective in fighting the flu than the current vaccines that we use. That started on Long Island.
Right.
And it's still on Long Island. And they're creating jobs. But it all came out of our educational institutions. And that's one of the interesting things here is Long Island is beginning to understand the strength, the value of an educational network. Obviously the principal purpose of NCC and Stony Brook and Hofstra and Delphi and Malloy is to educate the next generation.
Yeah.
But one of the spin-offs is the research that's being done there, the inventions that come out of those institutions that then create businesses. And why does that matter? Because we are much more likely to grow businesses on Long Island versus trying to lure a business to come to Long Island. If you talk to the industrial development agencies, which I do all the time, it's very difficult to attract a major company to Long Island because it's expensive to do business here. We are an island, so transportation is an issue. And it is very difficult for us to compete with much lower cost states and regions in the country. However, if we grow businesses locally, grown businesses here, they're much more likely to stay. And that's one of the things you see in the pharmaceutical industry. Many of the major employers in pharmaceuticals on Long Island started here. Started in someone's laboratory, started in someone's small industrial building, and today they employ 400 people or 2,000 people.
And in that vein, and I think you're right. I think it's a great thing for them to incubate here and to start here and to go through it. But one of the biggest complaints I hear from companies trying to start up is that Long Island and New York government gets in their way. They're the main stoppage to that happening.
It is hard to navigate. In New York State, we have a lot of regulations. There's no doubt about that. It is difficult to start a business in New York State. But the other side of this is, and I hear the same thing from businesses, the other side of this is there are reasons why we have regulations.
Oh, definitely.
And you have to decide as a citizen, do you want to live in a society where there are some regulations, or do you prefer not to?
Well, but let's look at where the regulations are, though. We're not talking about the regulations on a product that the company just finished making and we're regulating it so it doesn't kill people. We're talking about regulations that stymie a company from getting started in the first place. Those are two different things, because they are actually getting rid of consumer protections are disappearing under this administration. They're going away.
But there are two sides to it. I mean, I always urge businesses to do a little research and figure out, well, why is that regulation in place in the first place? And once you've done that, don't sit in your office and throw up your hands and say, government is my enemy, government is trying to kill my business. No. You need to get involved in the political process. You need to go and talk with your state assemblyman, talk with your state senator, present your problem to them. I have found that when you actually move from simply complaining to yourself in an empty office and actually engage the administration, in other words, government agencies at all levels, and you engage elected officials at all levels, you can make progress. It may not be as quick as you would like, but to say that government at all levels is turning a deaf ear to business is not correct.
Oh, no, I wouldn't say that. But I would say that people get the feeling that they don't know whose hand to grease in order to continue to move forward and create a business. And when you have an atmosphere like that and people actually think that, we got a problem.
You're exactly right.
And considering how long the difference in the time it takes to start a business on Long Island than if I went to, let's just say, Kansas. I just picked a state out of the hat. It's like 5 times longer just to get the okay to begin doing something on Long Island. Why is that? That can't just be because we live on the East Coast or because, you know what I'm saying? There's something wrong here.
Well, I think that, first of all, no business should be greasing anybody's palm. That's illegal.
Yeah, no kidding. But if you get this is my contention. If you want to be an honest politician, you're up against a lot, because you're going to get into an arena that I believe creates cynics.
Well, it's very easy, as I think you know. I covered state politics for a number of years, and many people have said the same thing to me, that they feel that the political system is corrupt.
Well, I was in construction for years, so I'll just put that on the table.
And I would say to you that yes, there are some bad apples, but it doesn't mean the whole barrel.
No, and nobody's saying that. But if there are enough rotten apples in the barrel's no good. They don't all have to be rotten.
No, but it is a very, very, very distinct minority of people. For example, the state legislature has 213 members. It is a very, very, very infinitesimal small group that have a problem with the law. The vast majority of people are trying to do an honest day's work. They're trying to serve the public. Now, you may disagree with the positions they're taking, but until I see evidence that someone has broken the law, I personally err on the side that they're trying to do the right thing. Until I see evidence that they're trying to break the law, I'm not going to label them as a criminal.
No, you're a reasonable person, and I understand that. But when you look at the situation and it continues to happen, something's wrong. Somebody has to, figure it out.
Well, hopefully, and one of the interesting things, frankly, about the study on the looming workforce shortage is that by doing a study like this, the idea of the Long Island Association and the authors of this study is to begin a discussion at all levels, at the political level, at the business level, at the community and neighborhood association level. This is not the kind of problem that a few people can solve.
No, you're right.
This is the type of problem where the community has to come together. Yep. And the LIA is very specific in saying there is no silver bullet to solving the worker shortage that's coming in the future. And as I said, we're talking 15, 20 25 years down the road.
Yeah. No, well, you know what? I like what you said, that the idea that they're trying to start a conversation. I think that is, critical. That really is, because I think there are a lot of people on Long Island who come from different areas that can bring something different to the conversation. But we have to listen to everybody.
Right, exactly. And one of the reasons it's frankly interesting that this came from the Long Island Association is the Long Island Association is, as I said, Long Island's largest business group. But what's interesting is, if you look at the membership of the Long Island Association, this is a real broad cross-section of Long Island. It is not just the big employers.
Right.
They have a large component of membership that are small business owners, people who have 5 employees, 15, 20 employees.
Right, that's good. Right.
And the goal here, from what Kevin Law, the president of the Long Island Association, told me, is not to say we have the answer, but to say we see a problem down the road based on the fact that the number of individuals who are 0 to 19 years old is falling.
Right.
So that means we're going to have fewer people age 20, 21, 22, all the way up to 39. And so what they're saying is, let's start figuring this out now until we get to a point where we have a significantly smaller number of 20 to 39-year-olds, and then what do we do?
Yeah, right.
And some of our employers, for example, I had a long conversation with Discover Long Island, which, as you know, is our tourism promotion organization. And they were telling me that their members are already scrambling to find employees, college students, teenagers and college students, and they're already having a problem doing that.
Well, tell me something. The Long Island Business Association, do they have a presence on like Facebook and places like where people can get in touch with them?
Yes. In fact, so for example, if you go to Twitter, and you type in at Long Island Assoc, ASSOC. You can follow them on Twitter. They have a very good website that you should probably also look at, which is just longislandassociation.org. And you can find all their previous reports as well.
Beautiful.
Which is something that's helpful. This research institute is about 3 years old. It's nonpartisan. It's not about politics. This is about numbers. And the numbers that they're presenting, in many cases, it's census data. So these are not estimates. This is not back-of-the-envelope guesstimates. They're trying to give solid information. And the reason they're giving this information is not to tell people what to do, but to say, here's some information. Let's work together to figure out what is the possible solution to this.
Right.
And in talking to Kevin Law, he said to me, the solution is probably many different ideas, many different actions.
Yeah.
Because there isn't one way we can solve this problem. But I thought one of the interesting parts of this study was they looked at where we are with reverse commuters. Mm-hmm. And it was very interesting to see that the number of reverse commuters, even before we made all these changes with the Long Island Railroad adding, extra tracks and East Side access, we've seen an increase in reverse commuters 27% between 2010 and 2017. So in other words, 116,300 people commute every day from New York City to jobs on Long Island.
Right. Well, hey, maybe we can continue the trend. In any event, the clock on the wall is screaming at me that we've got to get out of here.
Well, thank you for the time. It's always good to be with you.
Thank you. And I hope to talk to you soon, especially those industrial development agencies. I would love to talk a little more about that, but I have to run. They're going to drag me right out of the studio now.
I look forward to doing it, and I hope all your listeners have a terrific weekend.
Great, and you too. Thank you very much, James. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, take care.